Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Kennedy assassination, what the House Select Committee actually concluded. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On November 22, 1963, the President of the United States was shot dead in broad daylight during a motorcade through downtown Dallas, before hundreds of witnesses and multiple film cameras. And more than 60 years later, the American government's own official record has never agreed on who was responsible. The Warren Commission, assembled within weeks of the killing, concluded in 1964 that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The case, it declared, was closed. It was not closed. In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, a second official investigation convened after years of sustained public pressure, reviewed the same evidence and reached a fundamentally different conclusion: that Kennedy was probably killed as the result of a conspiracy. That finding rested on acoustic analysis of a Dallas police recording suggesting a fourth shot originated from the grassy knoll, implying a second gunman. The National Academy of Sciences subsequently challenged that acoustic evidence, declaring the recording was not contemporaneous with the shooting. The probable conspiracy conclusion remained on the official books. Over 5 million pages of JFK assassination records now exist in federal archives. The CIA has officially acknowledged it withheld certain information from the Warren Commission. Batches of declassified documents released between 2017 and 2023 revealed new details about agency operations, but produced no definitive revelation. So who decided John F. Kennedy should die, and was Lee Harvey Oswald truly the only person involved? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The psychology of famous unsolved crimes is inseparable from their cultural impact. Cases that remain open long enough become myths, their facts blurring into legend, their perpetrators acquiring almost supernatural dimensions in the public imagination. Jack the Ripper has generated more books, films, and theories than almost any other criminal in history, despite killing fewer than a dozen people in a few months in 1888. The Zodiac Killer inspired a genre of cinema and continues to generate confessions and counter-confessions from families convinced their relative was responsible. D.B. Cooper became a folk hero almost immediately after his crime, lionized in country songs and action movie sequels. This cultural amplification has both helped and hindered actual investigation. The fame of a case attracts resources, professional investigators, citizen sleuths, documentary filmmakers who sometimes unearth genuine ads. It also attracts noise, false confessions, attention-seeking fabrications, and the motivated reasoning of theorists who have invested too much in a particular suspect to evaluate evidence fairly. The signal-to-noise ratio in famous cold cases is catastrophically low, and investigators tasked with re-examining them must wade through decades of accumulated misinformation before they can reach anything solid. Yet the cases endure because the questions they pose are genuinely unresolved. The perpetrator was never conclusively identified. The motive was never established. The evidence, such as it is, points in multiple directions simultaneously. These are not merely historical curiosities, they are open problems, waiting for the right technology or the right insight to finally crack them. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Kennedy assassination. What the House Select Committee actually concluded is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963, while riding in a presidential motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested the same afternoon and charged with the murder. 2 days later, on November 24, Oswald was shot and killed by Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby while being transferred between jails, eliminating the only named suspect before he could stand trial and permanently foreclosing direct interrogation of the primary accused. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Warren Commission, chaired by Chief Justice Earl Warren and convened by President Johnson weeks after the assassination, published its report in September 1964. It concluded Oswald acted alone and fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. The commission found no credible evidence of conspiracy. Its single bullet theory, that one bullet passed through both Kennedy and Governor Connally, was central to the lone gunman conclusion and remains contested. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, convened in 1976 and reporting in 1979, conducted new acoustic analysis of a Dallas police dictable recording. The committee concluded there was a high probability that 2 gunmen fired at Kennedy and that the president was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. The 4th acoustic impulse was triangulated to the grassy knoll north of the motorcade, suggesting a second shooter fired from that position during the ambush. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, in 1982, the National Academy of Sciences convened the Ramsey panel to review the hsca acoustic evidence. The panel concluded the dictable recording used to identify a 4th shot was made approximately 1 minute after the assassination and was therefore not captured during the shooting. This directly undermined the hsca conspiracy conclusion. The NAS finding was itself disputed by researchers who argued the panel's methodology was flawed, and the debate has continued unresolved. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of more than 5 million pages of Kennedy assassination records are held across federal agencies. The JFK Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992 required full public release by 2017, but successive administrations withheld thousands of documents citing national security. Batches were released in October 2017, December 2021, and December 2022. As of 2023, a small number of records remained classified, sustained objections from the CIA contributing to continued delays. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Central Intelligence Agency has officially acknowledged it withheld information from the Warren Commission. The CIA attributed this to compartmentalization of covert operations, including plots to assassinate Fidel Castro, rather than to knowledge of the assassination itself. Researcher Jefferson Morley documented in 2023 how CIA officer George Joannides, who handled the Warren Commission review process, had concealed his own operational history with anti-Castro groups that had prior contact with Lee Harvey Oswald. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Kennedy assassination, what the House Select Committee actually concluded. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the lone gunman conclusion, that Oswald, acting entirely alone, fired all shots from the Texas School Book Depository's 6th floor, is the Warren Commission's official position and is defended by journalist Gerald Posner in his 1993 book Case Closed. Forensic ballistic analysis and autopsy evidence are cited in support. The main objection is that Oswald's motive was never established, and his murder by Ruby 2 days after the assassination permanently prevented any cross-examination of the primary suspect under oath. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that a second shooter fired from the grassy knoll north of the motorcade route, the basis for the hsca 1979 probable conspiracy conclusion. Multiple witnesses reported hearing shots from the knoll and smelling gunpowder there. No physical evidence of a second gunman, shell casings, bullet fragments, or a recovered firearm was ever found at the location. The acoustic evidence underpinning the theory was challenged by the NAS Ramsey panel in 1982, leaving the conspiracy determination without surviving physical corroboration. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that involvement of the CIA, organized crime, or anti-Castro Cuban exiles, variants argued by historians, including Jefferson Morley and David Kaiser, citing the agency's documented concealment of information from investigators and Oswald's known contacts with exile groups. The main objection is that no direct operational evidence linking any of these entities to the actual shooting has ever been produced. The documented withholding of information falls short of proof of participation in planning or executing the assassination. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Kennedy assassination, what the House Select Committee actually concluded, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the hsca acoustic analysis, 1979, conducted by Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, identified impulse patterns on a Dallas police dictable consistent with 4 gunshots, the 4th triangulated to the grassy knoll. The committee accepted this as sufficient to conclude probable conspiracy. The NAS Ramsey panel, 1982, determined the recording was made approximately 1 minute after the assassination, directly contradicting the hsca interpretation and removing the primary physical basis for the committee's conspiracy conclusion from the evidentiary record. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the single bullet theory that Commission Exhibit 399 passed through Kennedy's neck and Governor Connolly's chest, wrist, and thigh in a single trajectory is central to the lone gunman conclusion. Failure analysis associates conducted a 1993 computer simulation supporting the single bullet path as geometrically consistent with the 2 men's documented positions. Critics argue the bullet's near-pristine condition is inconsistent with the tissue damage attributed to it, and no definitive consensus has been established. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed autopsy photographs and X-rays of President Kennedy, analyzed by the hsca forensic pathology panel and multiple independent experts, consistently confirmed entry wounds in the rear of the skull and upper back, consistent with shots from behind and above, in the direction of the book depository. No physical evidence of a grassy knoll shooter was discovered despite immediate law enforcement searches. No shell casings, bullet fragments, or witness account of a specific individual with a weapon was confirmed at that position. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Kennedy assassination, what the House Select Committee actually concluded. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. As of 2023, thousands of declassified CIA documents had been released without producing a definitive revelation. Jefferson Morley's research established that the agency concealed operational information from Warren Commission investigators. Information the CIA maintained was unrelated to the assassination itself. Polls conducted across 6 decades consistently show that 60 to 70% of Americans believe a conspiracy was involved. The hsca probable conspiracy conclusion, based on acoustic evidence that was subsequently challenged, remains the only official government finding that moved beyond the lone gunman verdict. The assassination is the most investigated murder in American history. The question of whether Lee Harvey Oswald had assistance has never been officially closed. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Kennedy assassination, what the House Select Committee actually concluded, from the historical record, through physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of JFK assassination ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.